Is it ever ethical to pretend to do CPR? Apparently, a lot of people think that it is. A recent article in Stat News defended something called a slow code. Now, when a patient codes in the hospital, that means they've stopped breathing or their heart has stopped beating. And when this happens, the medical team gets alerted to run to the patient's room and start CPR. Chest compressions, a breathing tube down the throat, the whole 9 yards to try and bring the patient back to life. But in a slow code, doctors might walk instead of run to the room, or do chest compressions that are a little less hard. Basically, fake the resuscitation attempt. Now, the authors of this article claim that the practice of slow coding is ethically defensible. Here's why they think so. CPR was invented for people who had a sudden, unexpected cardiac arrest. In other words, CPR was always meant for people with bodies that were otherwise healthy. And when the heart suddenly stops in a body that's otherwise healthy, CPR can be, and often is, life-saving. But over the years, CPR has morphed into this intervention that everybody gets by default, no matter how likely the person is to benefit from the CPR attempt. And with the way that CPR is portrayed in movies and TV shows, the general public tends to think that CPR is more effective than it is in real life, especially in situations where the patient is clearly dying of a chronic progressive illness like cancer or dementia or heart failure. Case in point, when someone has a cardiac arrest in the hospital, the CPR survival rates are dismal. We're talking single digits here. And even in the unlikely attempt that the CPR works, you are more often than not coming back in even worse shape than you were before. But many patients, including those with a terminal illness, will still insist that the medical team attempt CPR if their heart stops. And doctors often fear that between local laws and litigious families, that they could be severely punished for trying to do the right thing. The right thing being saying no to a CPR attempt on someone where the CPR attempt would be very unlikely to help and very likely to cause more suffering. So, in an attempt to fulfill the demand to attempt CPR, while also trying to do their duty of protecting the patient from suffering, some medical professionals will go through the motions of CPR without really trying to bring the person back to life, the slow code. Now, you may have some strong feelings about this practice. I do too. The authors say that slow codes are a symptom of a deeper dysfunction with how we manage death and dying in America. Agree. 100%. They also say that physicians should be empowered to practice good medicine, even when that means telling families things that they don't want to hear. I agree with that too. Truth-telling is essential for informed decision-making. What makes me uncomfortable with this article is what feels like a lack of self-awareness. The authors complain about a lack of public trust and medical expertise. I just wonder, how does an article that justifies deceiving patients and families do anything to restore that trust in doctors and nurses? We gotta get our own house in order, man. Where's the actual training in how to tell families difficult truths? Where's the actual training in having high-stakes, values-based, complex decision-making conversations with patients living with a serious illness? I've worked with so many patients who have changed their mind about wanting a CPR attempt at the end of their lives. Not because I was trying to change their mind, but because no one ever explained their situation to them in a way that they could understand, that was relevant to their priorities and their values. And you ask anyone else who works in palliative care, and they'll tell you the exact same thing. In the meantime, if you're living with a serious illness and this conversation is feeling a little close to home, here are some CPR-related questions that you can ask your medical team. What would a realistic outcome of a CPR attempt look like? What would it look like to prioritize the quality of my life? What would it look like to have a do not resuscitate in place instead? And if you still have questions about CPR in your mind, get that palliative care consult.